Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is Counterclipping show number 235, regardless of what the number says, for August 18th, 2025. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming out this evening. Let me turn that off. There we go. We are drinking the last of the Glenlivet Caribbean Reserve, bottled at 40%. Am I remembering that right? Indeed, it is 40%. It's very good, and it's good enough that I'm on my second one. So we are clipping campaigns in Europe, the Italian campaign, because it is on the table. The table is clear. The rest of the game room needs some work. Maybe I'll talk about that in a bit. And I scrambled to grab something right before the show. So before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. There's a whole bunch of ways to support the channel in the video description, so check those things out. We'll have a thing to mention in a little while. Super chats and super stickers are on. If you'd like to get your comment highlighted, it helps the channel out and ensures that I will not miss your important comment. So that's another great way to support the channel. I'd like to call your attention to the Noble Knight affiliate link in the video description. And as we get to the news, you will find that the Noble Knight International Shipping is Free promotion will begin tomorrow. I have a link for that. So international folks who normally are going to get raked over the coals on international shipping, although Noble Knight's pretty good about it. This way you get it for free, just like the rest of us in the U.S., if we go over whatever the dollar amount is. We'll talk about that. Big shout out to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, without whom the show could not continue. In particular, I would like to give shout outs to Nathan Ulm and Rob Moffat, who both signed up at the swordsman level this week. So thanks, Rob and Nathan, and I didn't put either of you in the ticker, so I apologize for that. Looks like my ticker got reformatted somehow. I'll fool around with that later. So, yeah, it's $149 for US, but I think it's $250 or $249 for international. I could be wrong, but you know, if you're going to buy stuff from Noble Knight, use the affiliate link, and we will. You'll get free international shipping. So that's awesome. I am aware of the Howard Chaykin cover on Patton's Third Army, but somebody said he did Paratroop 2, which I don't think I did know, and it didn't look like Chaykin to me, but maybe I'll have to bust out my copy and find out. So Rob Taylor stopped at Noble Knight on the way back to KC. Yeah, it's a great store. Took home 17 and brought only one new one. I mean, I did pretty good. I came home with a box full. When last time we went up there, I brought, I think, 4 or 5 boxes of games and came home with about a half a box of games. So I was pleased. And I was able to get rid of some stuff that I didn't really need. So that is all good. I'm going to throw a link to the Ardwulf Lair Discord community into the chat so people can hop into that. If you are watching the show after that has expired, just reach out to me. My email address is in the ticker at the bottom of the screen, and I will get you a personalized invite. And of course, big thanks to our good friends at Noble Knight Games, the official sponsor of the Counterclipping Show, from whom we will hear later on. Yeah, did I hear something about they're talking about reprinting Elst? But that may have been wishful thinking or idle chit chat. When I asked Pete Bartlett about it, he said, nobody's told me that. So, but that was quite a while ago. I have done some, I guess we're into the news segment here. So I will talk about the GMT P500 shipping update. This is as of a couple days ago. They are shipping the newest batch of P500s, including Barbarossa Army Group North, all the Space Empires and Talon stuff. I got my shipping notification. It is supposed to show up tomorrow. That what I am on the hook for here, I guess I'm not on the hook anymore, it's already paid, is Barbarossa Army Group North and Space Empires All Good Things. So if Kurt said they would, then I will take Kurt's word for it. That is almost certainly more recent news than I have. I asked Pete about it like a year and a half ago. So, Stigler got his AGN. Well, you're on that side of the country. That's not hugely surprised. Oh, God, thank God. Anything I could say about what's going on over there would be completely speculative. So, well, if I forgot, then I apologize, Stacking Limit. Welcome everybody to the show. Let me pull this down for just a moment. I see that my entire style thing has... Yeah, okay, that's better. That's better. That, I don't know what happened. Anyway, StreamYard probably reset something. It's all good. Well, that's a neat new feature. I didn't know that was available. We will not be taking advantage of that this evening. Anyway, I do want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Now, the link for the Noble Knight International shipping promotion, I'm putting it in the chat, but it will not actually be active until tomorrow at some point when they turn it on. So here you go. It is nobleknight.com, free international / free international shipping. So check that out starting tomorrow. And if you want to use the affiliate link, I would greatly appreciate that. That would be fabulous. And as Marty points out, we will almost certainly have a GMT shipping update this week at some point. About exactly when. Usually it shows up on Wednesday usually it's Wednesday because they got to screw with Brant. So, Vince Ree, thank you so much for the support. It is much appreciated. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to organize campaigns in Europe here. But I believe that everything should be able to fit in the Campaigns in Europe box. So what I think is going to end up happening is I'm going to have 3 or 4 counter trays total, and we will see. But tonight's topic is Ardy's favorite, top 20 war games. And of course, if you ask me this year, then probably 15 of them, give or take, would be the same. But a couple might have rotated in or out. After all, by this time next year, I may have played some stuff that I haven't played as of today. So the project of unplayed classics continues. So so international orders, you may be. Hold on a second. Well, Bill, you're not in. Are you in Canada? If not, let them know. So I'm sure they will be, they'll be on top of it. So, however this is going to work out, who knows? I still don't consider this a settled matter, but I've got a pretty good backstock of Cube for Me trays personally. And if they end up costing more because of tariffs, well, that'll be a consideration. Maybe I'll buy less of them, but what are you going to do? They are really nice trays. That said, for the purposes of these games, I'm going to use GMT counter trays because I have more of them. So, and I don't really think I'm going to have much trouble getting 2 of these magazine-sized games into a single counter tray, which means I can get all 4 games in 2 counter trays, and then the extra counters. I think there's 3 or 4 sheets of extra counters. I may need a counter tray or 2 for those as well. I'd like to keep the magazines in the box, but if I can't, I don't care. So it'll be fine. Anyway. All right, Golf Strike. Golf Strike is the game we're talking about. And speaking of Golf Strike, we have a giveaway this evening. Let me show you what we're going to give away. And it's not going to be this exact copy, but it is going to be the brand new release from Flying Big Games and Herman Lettman, The Rock of Chikamaga, courtesy of Herman himself, who continues to be the biggest mensch in wargaming. So that's why we call him Hermensch Lettmensch. So yeah, well, he's going to, you know what? Since the show, publishers have expressed interest in Golf Strike. So there you go. Yep, exactly. So yeah, Herman told me that too. And I'm like, I am completely not surprised. That could be a lot of fun. In any case, this is going to be shipped directly from Herman. So whoever wins, and we'll do the giveaway drawing in a little bit. Herman's going to ship it directly. So you'll give me your address, I'll pass it to Herman, and off we go, and you will get your brand new copy of The Rock of Chikamaga, which looks glorious. Mine's still in the shrink wrap because I had to clear the table off. Then there was some other stuff I have to do, but I'm going to get to unboxing that and some other things at the earliest opportunity. Let's move this over here. Okay, cool. So, hey, why not? I think you deserve it. And yeah, I mean, Herman's cooking, to say the least. So, Carl says he kept the magazines in his Campaigns for Europe box or Campaigns in Europe box, and there's no room for GMT trays. I'll see how it works out. Like I said, it's like a 2.5 or 3 inch box. I'm reasonably confident I can get the entire game in it. If I can fit the magazines, terrific. If not, I will live. So it'll be fine. I can ask him, Christoph, whoever. So upon request, If you win, I'll talk about this later when we actually do the giveaway. If you win, then and you want it signed, Herman didn't offer, but I'm sure he'd be delighted to. So just let me know. It would be cool. Caddies, Groundskeepers, and Gophers will be the expansion, I believe. And William Byrd is on top of that as well. So let's drink my very generous pour. Second pour of Glenlivet Caribbean Reserve. The Back 9 expansion. Absolutely. All right. So I'm going to start. So the way I set this list up is I came up with a list over dinner the other day. And I decided that I didn't want to include series as either like the whole series or as multiple games. So there will be a couple of series games in here. They are my favorites in those series, but I have not repeated any series. Otherwise, there would be 5 OCS games on this list. And I think that would be boring for people who are not into OCS. So, but we do have a number of series representatives, starting with number 1, the Great Battles of... we're doing this, by the way, not at number 20 to number 1. We're doing it in chronological order by topic. And this is the earliest topic. I didn't sort out the World War II ones. This is a marvelous package, and I picked this particular version. If you have the opportunity to pick this game up, it is a tactical Ancients game, ancient Greek stuff. It's all really, really cool stuff. Not all the battles are strictly speaking competitive, but there are competitive battles in this box, and all of the signature Alexandrian battles will be found in here, as well as a bunch of battles from Philip II of Macedon, Alexander's father, and some other ones as well. So this is a huge and marvelous package. If you are going to run this down, my advice would be to get the latest printing because it contains the Tyrant expansion. Now, some people aren't crazy about the Tyrant expansion because it's like 9 or 11 battles or something like that, and they can be a little samey if you just like play through the Tyrant battles beginning to end. But as somebody who felt obliged to like run the Tyrant expansion down because it was not included in the last printing, which looks exactly like this, then I am pleased that the new edition does include it. And it is a hugely value stuffed box too, right? I didn't do the roll call tonight, but I guess we'll skip it for the evening. I'm not. Yes, so this does include the Diatakoi, however you pronounce that, expansion as well. And in fact, if we look at the list, you'll see all of these battles. So this is the first. So there's like multiple editions of this game. Okay, the early editions don't even look like this. If we look at the previous deluxe edition, this is actually quite old at this point. And this, I think, added some additional battles, but the new one has all of those, plus a couple extra ones, plus everything from Phalanx, Diatakoi, Raphia, and then the latest printing will include Tyrant as well. The Tyrant we are referring to here are the Tyrants of Syracuse. So I kind of want that. And Jonathan Dyer just ordered a copy last night. Fantastic. Yeah. We have, it's a tremendous value-added package. Noble Knights got it for $65, really? Well, there's a 95% unpunched copy for $65, and the shrink-wrapped one is about $100, but that, considering the value in here, if you're into Ancients Tactical, I think it is worth your time. The really cool thing about GBOH for me, this is the Great Battles of History, a pretty venerable at this point series from GMT, Richard Berg, and Mark Harmon, is the way it models the differences in tactical systems and weapon systems and things like that. I think that really works really well. That said, the Great Battles of History series is a little more... There's never been a series rule book, unless you count Simple Great Battles of History, which you can, but that doesn't allow you to play all the battles from all the games. Every one of the games has some subtle distinctions about it, right? And usually those relate to the weapon systems or the command systems, or in the Roman stuff, you've got the way the Roman legions work in this game. So... Gulf Strike 2, The Battle for Augusta. Fantastic. But yeah, I can't recommend. I like the series a lot, but frankly, there's a number of volumes in the series that I think will only really appeal to aficionados of the series over those particular periods, like the 2 Japanese volumes, the War Galley, which is Naval Ancients, the Chariots of Fire, which is Ancient Mesopotamia, which I was all over. And then, what was the other one that was a bit of an, Lion of the North, but that's kind of been, I would call that game obsolete at this point. I believe the next thing to get reprinted is planned to be War Galley. Mr. David Thompson is here. David, thanks for stopping by, and thanks for joining us last night. Dan is fine. He was just enjoying his amazing toilet for the last time, as far as I can tell. Devil's Horseman is Mongol stuff. It's actually pretty cool too, but I haven't played any of those. Crusader counters. Crusader counters? I'd have to look. I think I have the Devil's Cauldron expansion. At this point, I believe I have all of the actual packaged expansions for GBOH. Obviously, there's a ton of scenarios and old C3Is that I don't have, but whatever. The new edition of War Galley is likely to contain the expansion as well. There was what's the big battle between Octavian and Mark Antony? Actium. I think there's a battle of Actium somewhere. Maybe that's in the core game. I'm not sure. But moving on from Great Battles of Alexander to our next, that's the old one. To our next exciting period, this time with the Romans. This was one of the very few war games, and even fewer hex and counter war games, that I did not dump when I got out of Wargames, because this game is awesome. The first one's pretty cool too, but I think that the first Punic War gives you a little more to chew on than the Samnite Wars of Volume 1 did. This is the Ancient World series, Richard Berg's Operational Ancients series, and while it does, I think, have some of Berg's idiosyncrasies as far as Chrome built into the game, I don't believe that it is unmanageable. Some of the mechanics would probably be handled with something like cards nowadays. If this were to be redesigned today. Of course, one of the things on the reasonably near horizon is Volume 3 of this series, Thunderbolt, which is the second Punic War. That is the Punic War that everybody wants a game about, with Hannibal and the elephants and the Alps and all that stuff. If you bought, to answer HUN644, Salamis, that is correct. There's actually two different battles of Salamis, though. There's two different battles of Salamis, one of which is included in War Galley, the other one is in the expansion, and I think the last printing did include that. So back to this question. I mean, if Berg had done 10 of these, I'd have bought them. I would have been cool with that. So Molotov Cockatiel mentions that 2 GBOH land games have naval battles in them. So that is in Great Battles of Julius. So if you have the more recent Great Battles of Julius Caesar, you've got those naval battles. The other volume that naval battles it's the only volume that naval battles were in, was Caesar Conquest of Gaul, which is included in the deluxe Great Battles of Julius Caesar. They should. So back to Thunderbolt. So if there's 2 different versions of Thunderbolt on P500, there's a regular edition, which is Thunderbolt, and there's a deluxe edition, which also contains effectively a reprint of volumes 1 and 2, because there's substantial duplication of components between these games. The maps, for example, you're just getting, the other one map, I think. So you don't really need... They didn't really need, and all the markers can be shared and all that stuff. So I ordered the deluxe one, because why not? Even though I have both the original games, I didn't get rid of them. I've played both of them. They are marvelous games, even above and beyond the fact that they are on a topic that isn't covered all that often, Operational Ancients. So if you are interested in the Giant Wooden Horse, Chariots of Fire for GBOH does include a Battle of Troy scenario with all the heroes from the Iliad and all that stuff. I have not played the Troy scenario, but it looks pretty cool. So that's the deal on Thunderbolt. Yeah, really, really cool game. The additional map for the Second Punic War is basically part of Iberia, the Iberian Peninsula. So yeah, exactly. I'll be happy to get. I mean, I would have just bought Thunderbolt, but they offered it twice, so I'll get the bigger one. I would call the Troy scenario a little whimsical and very Berg. I will say that. Next up, we are on to American Civil War. Did I forget to include? You know what? I had trouble thinking of a single Napoleonic game that I wanted to put on this list. There's a couple that I really want to play, like Nations in Arms. And I have deferred, and maybe we'll do this again in a couple of years. Who knows? Maybe in another 200 and however many episodes it is. We'll do another one. Oh, there's a reprint of Chariots of Fire coming. I'll have to look at that. Damn it. I really like the maps, too. I really like the maps, the components. I think the games are really, really nice. So, Rebel Fury. This is Mark Herman, a pretty recent release, actually. Now, this is it's a kind of its own system. That evolved, not evolved much, but originally this system appeared in C3I magazine in the game Gettysburg. Now I had that issue and I fiddled around with it and I'm like, you know what? I'm not thinking this is going to work for me. But once you look at Rebel Fury and you see that there's multiple battles and there's a lot of different things that this system can do, and things have been, tightened up a bit, I think. I think this system is extraordinarily clever, really quite fast playing. It's one of those things that's like, there's no way this is going to work, and you play it and it works. It's like, what do you mean you could just move as much as you want? Well, I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, there is a limit, but it just works. It's incredibly ingenious. And this is one of those things where when somebody said, somebody asked the question, I'm not sure what show it was on, about what, features of war games or, subsets of mechanics that we see in war games really need a second look to try and come up with some new ideas. I think movement is one of those things. That's one of the reasons I like Goss, which will not be making an appearance on this list, although I like several of those games too. This is a game that does that. And it's amazing that it actually works. So, I mean, the combat is pretty fast, but that's part of the sort of the modus operandi of the game. Yeah, and I did see that. So, having played Army of the Potomac at last November, it's also really cool. By the way, I have not yet watched the Player's Aid video interviewing Mark from WBC, so I did not make it to WBC. That is unfortunate, but that's the way the ball bounces in this case. I don't have a Franco-Prussian War game that made the cut either. Hey, we could do an honorable mentions show at some point too, and there's definitely at least one. I don't know about Franco-Prussian War. I haven't played a Franco-Prussian War game, to the best of my recollection, since SPI's Franco-Prussian War, and that was a long time ago. So I'm not sure I'd have a much to say about it. But 7 Years' War, on the other hand, I've got a couple pretty nice 7 Years' War games, including Frederick the Great, which came real close to making this list. In any case, Rebel Fury, definitely worthwhile. I feel like I am out of order here. I am absolutely out of order. So next we will cover Roads to Gettysburg 2. This is part of the Great Campaigns of the American Civil War series, currently published by Multiman. This is a combination of two previous games in the series. Here Come the Rebels, which is the Antietam campaign and other stuff associated with that, and Roads to Gettysburg, which is the Gettysburg campaign and other battles associated or other actions associated with that. Plus Rebels in the White House, which is Monocacy and Fort Stevens. It's Jubal Early's raid on Washington in 1864. I think it's 1864. And I haven't played any of those, but I have played the Antietam stuff. I've played the Gettysburg stuff. And I think overall, this is my favorite individual package in the entire series, just because there's so much in here. But also, I think it is more accessible to the similarly ambitious On to Richmond 2. On to Richmond itself, that campaign, is one of the more complex campaigns in GCACW, in my opinion. Unless you step up to the, Long Roads to Gettysburg, Long Roads to Antietam, that kind of stuff. I think it's a little heavier. Same deal with something like Atlanta Is Ours, which is just like one module too. But this is another tremendous value package. I mean, it better be. It was expensive. I'm not going to tell anybody it wasn't expensive. I don't even know what this is going for now. It's out of print. $350 on Geek Market. So, sorry. Noble Knight may have it from time to time, but they will charge what it's worth there. But there's just a tremendous amount of stuff in here for like every level of GCACW play. If you're just getting started, there are scenarios in here for that. I particularly like the Cedar Mountain. I think both of them are in here, actually. I think it's Cedar Mountain that I'm thinking of. It's a really good scenario. It really gives you a good idea of how GCACW works without giving you too much to deal with. And then it goes, up from there in terms of complexity. There's not like just one easy scenario. There's a bunch of short or small scenarios that you could play. And people who know how to play GCACW can play those scenarios in a couple hours. So, I said it's my top. So, I love GCACW. I have everything ever published for it. It is among the I think best game, or my favorite, right, game system, certainly for Civil War and certainly for operational Civil War. So I don't know that, I knew that there would be a GCACW entry on this list. And this is the one I picked as a favorite. This is also the one, probably for this reason, that I have played the most. But if we count by hours, that's probably not true, because that's probably on to Richmond. But if we count by like number of scenarios played, I have played more scenarios out of Roads to Gettysburg 2 than I have any other single box in the system. Don't even remind me of that. Don't even remind me of that. There could be. I should do a Franco-Prussian War episode. Actually, that is on the list of things I would like to do, because there are some good ones. Yes, I'm thinking of South Mountain. I am thinking of South Mountain, which is in the run-up to Antietam anyway. Egray Day asks, in the U.S., is Civil War more popular and represented than Napoleonics? I kind of feel like it is, but I'm also probably not completely and I haven't thought about it very hard either. I'm probably not a completely unbiased observer, because I'll go back and forth as to which of those two periods I like. If we are talking about pre-20th century gunpowder stuff, then my chief interests are with Napoleonics and U.S. Civil War. This is probably true, but I am disinclined to cut this film that amount of slack right now. Carl plays GCACW once a month and play the scenarios in chronological order. That's awesome. And Doug from Tabletop Side just do a GCACW stuff now too, so that is worth a look. So check out the Tabletop's Edge. I think I saw Doug pop in here at some point tonight, but I didn't do the roll call, so sorry. Rob Taylor avoids Napoleonics as he doesn't want another period of history to buy games for. I actually sympathize with this. There are topics that I have either passed on individual games because I feel like I've got one or two things on a topic that I'm not that into, and that's probably enough, but you're on a dangerous precipice right there too. So, exactly. It's more like a Comedy Central show, I think. And this is there's some truth to this too. Perfidious Albion says that maybe Napoleonics is more popular in Europe, but a lot of the games that get published are published by U.S. publishers, and that's going to be a factor, right? So just looking at GMT in the last couple of years, GMT has done a couple of Civil War games, and they've done at least one Napoleonic game too. That's I Napoleon, which I think we probably don't consider a war game, but it is, it's war game adjacent. Mike Reed likes Napoleonics over ACW, as the former has a lot of variety and all three arms are present in quantity, whereas ACW is very symmetrical and slugfest. There can be a lot of slugfests in American Civil War battle games. That's one of the reasons why I really enjoy GCACW, because it shows the value of maneuver. It is a game of timing and maneuver, and you are not in complete control of the timing either. So, for miniatures, I seem to see. Don't take my word for this. Talk to somebody that went to Historicon. But I tend to see more Napoleonic than Civil War miniatures too. But like the only events I see miniatures at is Origins, and there's not that much historical miniatures there anymore. There's not none, but there's less than there used to be. So. All right, so moving on from, pull this out, the American Civil War to World War I. I would be remiss in leaving out Ted Racer's magisterial Paths of Glory. I am well aware of the limitations of this game as a historical simulation, but as a strategy game, I think it works marvelously. It is a game that, again, if you know what you're doing, you can play it in a sitting, more than a couple hours. But it's you should be able to play a game of Paths of Glory in 4 or 5, maybe 6 hours, if nobody has to spend a lot of time looking the rules up. The complexity is fairly high for this kind of game, meaning that it's a point-to-point map and it's card-driven play with ops points. So a classic Hermanian CDG. Well, just pick one. Who cares? Pick one. It's okay. Use the ones that came in the box. That's okay too. I having actually dug into some Labatai stuff. I wanted to put a Labatai game on this list too, but I've only played one of them, and that would feel stupid. So I had a fabulous time playing Labatai de Mont Saint Jean, and I will absolutely play more Labatai at some point. John Kleinhens is playing this for the first time right now. I did. My most popular wargaming videos are the Paths of Glory instructional series, which I didn't finish, but I did cover the vast majority of the game's rules in the 4 videos that I actually got done. So I don't feel particularly bad about it, and it's a little too late to step back into it now. There's a new version of the game, that the map's different, all that stuff. So Rob Taylor likes American Civil War because he can drive to the battlefields. That makes complete sense to me. I'm within driving distance of some of that stuff as well. Carl saw a lot of Napoleonics at Consim World and played Napoleon at Leipzig and ILAU 1807. Awesome. I'm trying not to get backed up on the chat here. All right, so yeah, Paths of Glory is a terrific game. There's some kind of weird artifacts in it just because of the way a CDG works. But some of the common complaints about CDGs and historicity have been designed away by Ted in this particular game. So, like many CDGs, but unlike some CDGs, there is an early, middle, and late war deck. So you do get, like, the early events will happen early, and the middle events will happen in the middle, and the late events will happen late. So the Russian Revolution, for example, is probably going to happen in the late war. And both the Russian Revolution and the U.S. entry into World War I are things that require the play of multiple cards. So if you're going to go after those things, you're really, as either the Axis, or I should say, Central Powers or the Entente player, then you're going to have to spend some time setting those things up to make sure that they happen. All right, so Mike Reed vastly prefers single shared deck CDGs over separate decks, though Empire of the Sun seems to get it right. We'll talk about that shortly. Paths of Glory gets to a lot of min-maxing tomfoolery. I mean, again, this isn't untrue, but it doesn't bother me in the context of this game. All right, Brent hates the U.S. Civil War. I don't know why, but he does. I mean, if you're just not into a period, then okay. I mean, what are you going to do? Or am I going to sit him, duct tape him to the chair and force him to play GCACW or something? And Mike Reed, like I said, you kind of gotta make these things happen. Neither of these things are automatic. So you've got to be pushing for U.S. entry as the Entente player, for example. There's you got a lot of people here. So yeah, if you have not If you have not yet thumbs up the video, please do thumbs up the video. Ed Holtzman says Jean-Michel Grosjou, who has a fabulous channel and does videos in both French and English, has some teaching videos for Paths of Glory, and I think Harsh Rules did some too. I could be misremembering that. No, it is not. Since Great War in Europe is not on this list, it was considered. So Great War in Europe is Ted Racer design, originally appeared in Command Magazine, and then was later released as a deluxe edition by GMT. And I think that's probably the one that you want if you're going to run down Great War in Europe. That's a terrific game, actually. But Paths of Glory is completely different. Great War in Europe is a hex and counter game with sort of disconnected map areas for the different fronts. It actually plays really well. I played the original Command Magazine version of it back in the day. I would quibble with the term scripting. I see what you mean, however, because the cards do drive play to a considerable extent. But I don't know that I think I'd use the word scripting in this particular case. I think I could come up with better examples of scripted gameplay than anything we see in Paths of Glory. Now, there is a player's guide, which included some additional cards. I understand that material, including the cards, is in the newer printings of this. So, again, I would probably go after the new printing. All right. Oh, yeah, good point. No kidding. Welcome to living in one of the most densely populated parts of the world for the last 1,000 years. Mike Reed had so much hope for Guns of August. So I actually have reacquired Storm of Steel, but I haven't done anything with it yet. I hope to have something intelligent to say about it at some point. I will say that it is set up in a way that is somewhat similar to Axis Empires. In the way that the cards play. It has cards, quite a few cards actually, but it's not a CDG in any meaningful sense. It is rather a straight hex and counter game in which you play different cards to like activate offensives and stuff. So it's a pretty neat game, and don't take me saying it's sort of similar to Axis Empires too seriously, because it is somewhat different, but it's a similar idea. There are many really fascinating characters in both the Napoleonic period and in the American Civil War, frankly. All right, so moving on from Paths of Glory, we have the U.S. Civil War by Mark Simonich. Now, it was either going to be this or Eric Lee Smith's seminal The Civil War, 1861 to 65 from Victory Games, which is a marvelous game and which was a big inspiration for this. But on the other hand, this plays considerably faster and smoother. I am more likely today, well, not today, but like in 2025, to bust this out than I am to bust out the Victory Games Civil War, as good a game as it is. And it is excellent. I've got a playthrough video of this as well on the channel, so go check that out. You'll see Grant get killed in the first turn he shows up. It's a lot smoother. You know what? This was really, really, really close for the people. Could have made it, but I put this one in instead. I could easily have, and frankly, if I'd have put this list together a year ago when I was fresh off a game of For the People, I probably would have put that in here instead of this. But here we are in 2025, and I'm nominating U.S. Civil War. But For the People is a fantastic game as well. So the naval rules in U.S. Civil War were like the sticking point in the rules for this game as well. So you do want to play with the more recent version of the rules. Doesn't really matter what edition of the game you have, just download the current version from GMT's website and you'll be fine. Or don't play with the advanced naval rules, just play with the basic game. It totally works fine. And I think it speeds the game up. So I have seen people play this in 6 hours, right? that know what they're doing. This is a game I see at every convention I go to. I see it at Origins. I've seen it at Compass Expo. Every Compass Expo. Usually there's multiple tables of it running at Origins potentially too. I've seen it at Winterfest. I've seen it at I think I even saw it at SD HistCon. I might be misremembering that though. But yeah, this is a marvelous game. And what's this going for nowadays? $40 at Noble Knight for what are we at? Third edition, second printing. $150 in the shrink wrap. Is this out of print again? This has sold out multiple times, I can tell you that. So it has sold out at least twice. The Ohio guys, yeah, I think you're right. It pretty much is those guys. But you know what? I mean, I really feel like U.S. Civil... the one criticism that I will make, it's not really even a criticism. It's merely an observation of it would be nice. And I've talked about this before, is the way that leaders work in the Victory Games Civil War is very dynamic. Leaders can go into a battle and get killed, or they get promoted, or, whatever. This does not do that. This has everybody the leaders show up on a schedule, they get promoted on a schedule, and they get removed from play on a schedule. I don't mind that, but it would be nice to have an optional rule set with a dynamic leader system. To be honest, that will slow this game down considerably, as it does for Victory Games Civil War. But it does add a significant dimension to the game, and I would, I'd like to have the option. Truthfully, I would usually end up playing this with the leaders on the schedule. So, yeah, exactly right. Well, I guess we're shipping Fremont back up to Milwaukee or somewhere like that where he'll be out of the way. Springfield was the classic location for this. But this is one of the things. And if you read the designer's notes for U.S. Civil War, Simonich says, this is why it's like this, right? And I agree with his reasoning, but I would also like to have the option if I wanted it. All right, so the latest on this, I think there were conversations about this at one point. The latest on this, and then Eric was saying he wanted to do it through self-publish it. The latest is that it's coming from Revolution Games. I will 100% buy a new edition to that game. I have the old one. It's a terrific game, but it's quite a bit chewier than U.S. Civil War, right? It's got a lot of the sort of activation mechanics are the actual play, like the way units activate between the Victory Games Civil War and the U.S. Civil War are pretty similar, but mechanically U.S. Civil War is much simpler. You're not pushing nearly as many points around or any of that. It just flows really, really, really well. All right. So, oh, nice. William Bird looked into... I bought U.S. Civil War when it came out, actually. When I was just getting back into wargaming, I went up to the Soldiery in Columbus, and they had this, and I was looking at it. I'm like, I had already played at that point For the People, so I was looking for a Civil War game other than For the People. And then I noticed that this has 2 mounted maps, and that's what actually sold me on it, but it turns out to be a terrific game. The other nice thing with the Victory Games Civil War is it does have the Western maps. You can play with that if you want. And there are variant leader systems for Victory Games Civil War, too. Mike Reed says that this painting is in the West Point Museum. Oh, sweet. All right, so moving on is another one from Ted, actually. 1914, Glory's End and When Eagles Fight. Now, I'm talking specifically about When Eagles Fight here. I have played both games in this 2-volume set, and they're both... Glory's End is good. When Eagles Fight is better, in my opinion. I have a playthrough series of this. Many, many, many rules mistakes were made in that playthrough series. But, nobody gets everything right. At one point, don't go in there now looking for anything but miniature GW or whatever, board game. They have a lot of board games. But they have almost no war games at all. So I'm specifically talking When Eagles Fight here. Now, these are 2 games that were released both by Ted that were released back in the day in Command Magazine. I was introduced to them. These were not Command Magazine issues that I had. I was introduced to them in this dual pack box set from GMT. This is, at this point, quite a bit out of print. Noble Knights got it for $80. Excellent near mint, 95% unpunched. That's not a bad price, to be completely honest about it. It's one map that's double-sided, so you got two different maps. Glory's End is the east front of World War I, but only the 1914 part of it. And When Eagles Fight is let me start over because I think I just said that wrong. Glory's End is the west front, the first 3 months of the west front in France, Belgium. When Eagles Fight is the entire war on the east front. And I had a tremendous amount of fun with When Eagles Fight. Mr. Mark Herman, thanks for stopping by. Your name has been mentioned already at least once. So, in many cases, yeah, I'm always a sucker for these multi-packs because I feel like they have good value. Presuming I like the designer of the system or the topic or whatever, right? I'm not just buying every random thing because where would I put it? But terrific game. Again, if you want to see playthrough content, mind the rules mistakes, but it is up on the channel. So super duper solid game. And When Eagles Fight plays pretty fast too. Glory's End plays a little slower, even though it's only 3 months, because I think the counter density is about the same, but you do counter swaps in Glory's End, which is not a mechanic, is not a thing I really particularly like. Well, unless you're worried, Mark, that I won't mention your name enough times, then I think we're going to be okay. So moving on from 1914, Glory's End. Next up from Mr. John Butterfield, we have RAF. And this was my selection of John's because I think it really is a masterpiece, I think. This was originally published back in the day by West End Games. It is published nowadays by Decision. And if you are going to run it down, I would recommend the current Decision Deluxe Edition, which has a mounted map, and it's in a 3-inch box, and it's really, really nice. As I've talked about this game a million times. I wanted to put a John Butterfield game on this list. What's my favorite game by John Butterfield? And what's my favorite solitaire game? I picked RAF. A couple of years ago, I might have said Field Commander Napoleon, and that could have made this list just as easily as well. Jeff Beeler says that the Command Magazine edition of When Eagles Fight is more affordable. That's probably true now, but I've got the old one, so I don't care. But yeah, I would get this one. So at least I never owned the old one. I've only ever had the Decision version. It's the Battle of Britain. It is a sort of operational air game, which, thumbs up from me. And it allows you to play solitaire as either side or play it as 2-player, which makes it an extremely powerful game, package. Highly recommended. Well, interesting. Amazon wants $126 for it for some reason. That's probably some third-party Yahoo. Fourth printing from Decision. Like I said, I would just make sure you get the deluxe one. $115 in the shrink wrap. That's less than Decision's MSRP apparently. So, which sounds approximately correct. You know what? Space Corps. I like Space Corps. It is, however, absolutely not a war game, and thus was not eligible to this list. Oh. Well, Brandt has the Brandt and Company have the solo wargaming survey up on the Armchair Dragoon site, so go ahead and check that out. I really like Space Corp too. Space Corp is a space sort of empire building Euro exploration / empire building Euro. I think you probably, if you're gonna play it more than a couple of times, I think you do want the expansion. And I think am I remembering correctly that there's another expansion that John's working on as well? And Marty says that there's going to be a digital implementation. Honestly, I might pass on the digital implementation of this. I think the game itself is straightforward enough that I don't really have to worry too much about it. I will observe, however, that this Battle of Britain game was not John's first Battle of Britain game. That was Battle Over Britain, published by TSR, although it may well have gotten started under SPI. That is possible. There you go. Yeah, that's what I thought. This is the one that the Armchair Dragoons do with Liz Davidson every year. We will do our giveaway, by the way, pretty much right after the message from our good friends at Noble Knight Games. Paste in the URL. Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I mean, I can understand that, but like the difference between the gap in playability between the digital version of Space Corp and the analog version of Space Corp, I think is not going to be that big. The gap for Mr. President, on the other hand, is going to be about the size of the Grand Canyon. So I will 100% jump all over that once it becomes available. And I think there's a demo available of it already, actually, but I'll wait for the full thing. I'm not dicking around with no demo. Moving on from RAF, we have my favorite Bulge game, Last Blitzkrieg, from legendary designer Dean Essig and Multi-Man Publishing. This is the first game in the Battalion Combat series of games, which I think we're up to 6 now, something like that, or maybe it's even 7. I don't know. I'd have to count them. They're all on the shelf in the other room. Nerd Workshop, thanks so much for stopping by. What is it that I like so much about RAF? I think it plays really well. I think it is a satisfying game, either playing as the British or as the Germans. I actually have not played it 2-player, but because you can play it all 3 of those ways, it is extremely flexible. So another favorite Battle of Britain game of mine is one we mentioned last week, Burning Blue, by Lee Brimacombe Wood and GMT. And while it's very similar to, it's more or less analogous scale wise to RAF or Battle Over Britain, but RAF plays cleaner and it is playable solitaire, which Burning Blue's really not. All right, Stuart, thanks for stopping by. Was just united with Inflection Point. I think you might be surprised how fluidly BCS plays. I am the more BCS I play, the more impressed with BCS I am. My best play experience in a Bulge game was in Last Blitzkrieg right here, and I would happily play it again, and I predict that I will. It is true that in both this and Baptism by Fire Volume 2 in the series, that they did not color code the units by formation. That is irritating, but having been the Germans, where this is going to be more of a problem, it's not that big of a deal. Did I accidentally move the wrong guys once or twice? I totally did, but it was not that big of a deal. I have not done this because, frankly, I think I agree with Dean on the fact that the extra stuff was not really necessary in the first place. If you want to play with it, by all means, go ahead, and maybe I'll do that at some point. But I have not tried it with the additional units. But it is the Battle of the Bulge. It's pretty much the whole Battle of the Bulge. It does. So Dean was a genius, as I think we can all agree, and just the mental leap that you take when you start playing BCS in terms of how this works is, I think, very similar to the mental leap that one takes stepping into Rebel Fury, where you're like, I'm not really clear on how this is actually going to work in practice. And then when you see it, you're like, wow, this is actually awesome. If you want kind of a look at what BCS does, and Last Blitzkrieg in particular, then again, check out the Tabletop's Edge YouTube channel. That's Doug. He has done a huge number of Last Blitzkrieg playthrough videos, which are not instructional, but they will definitely give you a good feeling for how this system works and plays. There is also the BCS magazine coming at some point in the hopefully near future, too. I 100% ordered that. So, all right, so moving on from Last Blitzkrieg. Well, there's plenty of Bulge games where Liège is, in fact, not on the map. There's very few that have Antwerp on the map. That was the notional goal that was completely unreasonable. All right, next up, still with World War II. I'll be frank, all but 2 of the rest of these are, in fact, World War II games. All right, so we'll get that set up there. All right, so World in Flames, strategic level World War II. This game has been around in its various editions since the 80s, I think. I was introduced to it with the 4th edition. We are now in the second collector's edition. It's very difficult to keep track of the different editions because there was a 4th edition, a 5th edition, a final edition, revised whatever it was called. It was always still called the final edition. And then there was the collector's edition, which is the current package, which is available for Noble Knight. It is not incredibly inexpensive, but the box is... check out my unboxing video of World in Flames if you are not convinced of just how big this box is. It is enormous. You know what? To be honest, Christoph, I've been looking at this same box cover for like 25 years now. And that never occurred to me until like 2 or 3 years ago, and it is impossible to unsee now. So whoever first pointed this out, I hate you. That's all I got to say. So, I will say that the final edition maps were, the mountains in particular, were pretty ghastly. That has been toned down to some extent in the collector's edition, but it is probably still a bit on the grating side, I think. Yeah, and this is exactly the problem. My understanding is that the Matrix digital version is a reasonably faithful AI-less, so I don't know how you're going to play it except solitaire. Iteration of the final edition. Okay, so it's like a couple editions behind now. But it does have its virtues, right? For one thing, the Matrix games digital version has the entire map at the European scale. So if you go by World in Flames, you'll see immediately once you start pulling the maps out that the scale for the European maps is different than the scale for the Pacific maps. No kidding. So the way this works in World in Flames is that it's just different terrain movement and other things costs for the hexes on the 2 different maps. And then there's actually like a 3rd map scale that sometimes gets brought into play as well. So, whereas the digital version actually has the entire planet at the European scale, which is neat. But I don't know what I think that's going to break the Pacific, frankly, and I don't know that I think it's a great idea if you do that. John Longshore sent me his copies of the physical maps that Matrix Games did, so I've got them. I could play the whole game on the European scale. But it wouldn't fit even if that entire room was game table, it wouldn't fit on that. So, all right, very good, John. Good choice. It's a very good game. It's one of the best games on the Battle of Britain. It's one of the best solitaire games. It is like everything else that John has done. From Decision, it is rock solid. Highly recommended. So the interesting things, Marty says, well, it's in flames, which is also a joke that's at least 30 years old. At one point, there were like 1 billion different little expansions that you could get for this. They have kind of, with the collector's edition, they have consolidated that considerably. So there's some like extra stuff that personally I didn't care about very much. But there are basically all that stuff has been either put in the core game or in one of the 4 expansions: Ships in Flames, Divisions in Flames, Territories in Flames, and Planes in Flames. And you get all of that if you get the Deluxe Collector's Edition, which should be available. And Noble Knight has it, so use the affiliate link if you're going to go buy it. World in Flames this is a big, complicated game. This is going to take 50 or 100 hours to play. It's playable with anywhere from 2 to, say, 5 or 6 people. There are 8 major powers, but 2 of them are nationalist China and France. And Italy is actually a little more interesting to play than France. But I guess it depends on how 1940 goes, because one of the kind of famous things that can happen in World in Flames if there's a, let's say, mismatch in skill level between the French and the Germans, and the French player is better than the German player, there's a pretty good chance that Germany's going to take a lot of extra time to conquer France in 1940, if they can manage it at all. And then if they don't, then you've got a completely different situation that you're looking at. So, very good. Surugaya, a good choice. Excellent choice. Patent in Flames, not really. However, here's the caveat to that. So Patent in Flames is basically the Patent's dream scenario. It's 1945 and Germany has been defeated. And now the Western Allies are going to war with the Soviet Union, and both of those sides will have Germans fighting for them, but mostly for the Western Allies, I think. So if that situation intrigues you, then you might want Patent in Flames, which has not been, strictly speaking, updated to the collector's edition, but I don't think that's a real problem. It is actually kind of a standalone package. America in Flames is the same type of thing. If you are really into the idea of it's 1947 or 48 and the, Axis forces are invading the Americas, go for it. Beyond that, if you're not interested in those specific situations, I think both packages are best for is just if your game goes into 46, 47, 48, 49, then I think there's like a lot of new force pool units to reflect the changes in military technology that happened in that time leading up to the Korean War. So I think you do want that stuff. I personally have everything for it, everything for World in Flames in the current edition, except for America in Flames and Patent in Flames. But I did buy the map. I'm not sure if they're still available, but I did buy the maps for America in Flames. There is a smaller version of the Americas map, which I think you do kind of want to use just so you know where all the convoys are going. If you are a World in Flames player and you've played the U.S. or the Commonwealth, when I say convoys, you probably have begun to perspire. Hexy, thanks for stopping by. The new RAF does have a mounted board. Yeah, if you get an old one, it might not. Toilets in Flames, I am reasonably sure was created by Dan. So, like I said, the maps, this is that's a terrible example. Hold on a second. Let's look at, here we go. So you're going to see that these mountains, this is the better version, by the way. You're going to see that these mountains look very strange, and they're really kind of grating on the eye. Trust me when I say that the previous edition's mountains were uglier than this, and these are not amazing, but the game is really good. It's very sandboxy. You could take it in a lot of different ahistorical directions. Just for some situations, some players are not going to want that. I like to have the flexibility to do that. It's also one of the few strategic level World War II games that covers the entire planet and has a naval system that doesn't shit its pants in the Pacific. This is something that Rising Sun, the old companion game to Advanced Third Reich, had an issue with. And which they took a lot of effort to kind of fix when they turned those two games into a world at war. So, all right. Alistair points out that if you're picking up RAF, if you're buying any game and you're about to play it, I would recommend looking at BGG to see if there are player aids available, to be honest. There is Factories in Flames too. It is my opinion that Factories in Flames is bullshit. I think it is way too much work, where you're basically assigning specific factories to build specific things. No, I don't want to deal with that. So yeah, you can go buy Factories in Flames if you want. I wouldn't bother personally, but some people do like it, so good for them. All right. Joe did these for a number of different games, actually. So one of the interesting things that you can do, it's very difficult to do this with the Chinese if you're somehow the 8th player and get stuck playing the Nationalist Chinese. And if you watch Doug, again, the Tabletop Set, just this entire show feels like a commercial for Doug. And we'll do Noble Knight as soon as we're done with Whiff here. You can make a really interesting game playing the French or the Italians in World in Flames if you know what you're doing. I think it'd be really hard to do that as the Chinese. It would be really hard. But you could play this game with up to 7 people, in my opinion. I think 5 or 6 is probably the desirable number of players. It also does work better if there's at least a third to play the Soviets, in my opinion. We're trying to get caught up on the chat here. In the meantime, however, let us get rid of this and hear from our good friends at Noble Knight Games, the official sponsors of the Counter Clipping Show. And we will do the giveaway right after we hear from Noble Knight. Take it away.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more. Going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at. Complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
All right, big shout out to our good friends at Noble Knight Games. They are the official sponsor of the Counter Clipping Show. And don't forget that free international shipping, a limited time only thing, but they'll run it for at least several days. Will begin tomorrow, and I've already put a link to that in the chat. All right, so the next thing that we are going to do is I'm going to check up on the chat, and we are let me pull, well, we'll have to keep it up. All right, hashtag Hermensch is what we're going with today for a lovely copy of Herman's amazing new magnum opus, The Rock of Chikamaga, which will be shipped directly from Herman. Anybody that wins, let me know what your address is via email, and I will get that information to Herman. If you would like it autographed, I'm sure Herman would be delighted to do that. So we did leave Dr. Ruth off of the list, so I apologize, but, just make sure that your spelling is correct. You can type it in more than once if you want to. You won't get more than one entry if you do, however. Only the first entry that is, proper will count. It is my goal, actually, to do this, including some of the more obscure ones, to be completely honest about it. We'll keep this running for a couple of minutes here while I yap. I can't wait to take a look at this. Like I said, I needed the table clear, and then the table got cleared off like last weekend, the weekend before a couple days ago, and I just haven't had the time. Other things have been going on, so I've got at least 3 games to do unboxings of. I think that's right. And we ought to have a whole lot of entries on this, folks. This thing is brand new. It weighs, I don't know what we said this thing weighs, but it's like 15 pounds, man. This is larger than some humans that I have picked up. It is an enormous box, and Flying Pig, the components are going to be nice too, as they certainly were in A Most Fearful Sacrifice. This is Chikamaga, which is my personal favorite Civil War battle to do Wargames on anyway, because it is a fascinating battle. If you want to read material on the Chikamaga campaign, Dave Powell has written a number of magisterial books on the topic. So, this is going to be one of those, I predict, Look at the Schmuck on the Camel will be on one of these lists someday. Axis Empires is pretty cool. I like Axis, but it's a completely different experience playing Axis Empires versus playing World in Flames, or a World at War, or the old ETO, or the advanced ETO and PTO, which I have not played, from Decision. But I've got both of those now, too. So if you're international on the winner here, then that might create some kind of issue, but I'm not sure. All right, so let me do one more here, and then we will do the drawing after one more. Hashtag Hermensch. Everybody's typing it correctly, so we're good to go. Another one that I think you won't be surprised to hear me say is one of my favorite games is my favorite Avalanche. And, there were a couple that could have made this list. But the one that did is, in fact, Flat Top. S. Craig Taylor's great game on the Battle of the Coral Sea. It's just so much fun to play. It is dated. I mean, let's face it. It is dated both graphically and in terms of design, but I can't tell you how much I love this game. It is just a marvelous game. It is paperwork heavy. There are many people who are just going to hate that. The maps are not great. This was originally released by Battle Line and then picked up by Avalon Hill, along with another, a big pile of additional Battle Lines, maybe everything from Battle Line, thinking about it. Although I don't believe that Avalon Hill redid everything that they got from Battle Line. Neil Badke mentions that Advanced European Theater of Operations does go for a good chunk of change. So thank you, Noble Knight. And everybody who chipped in to the campaign for it. Otherwise, I would not have that. I did have advanced PTO already, but that is relatively easy to get. I have a number of times played flat top with a referee, actually. The game and it will work better if it will be smoother, assuming your referee knows what they're doing. It will run smoother with a referee because they can kind of handle some of the fog of war, but the fog of war is pretty much all built into the game. That's what the paperwork is for. Vince Reed says, flat top, the game where the box corners come already blown. And that's absolutely true. This is an infamous box in the sense that it's very difficult to keep this box from getting absolutely destroyed. Carl, you have already missed the BCS entry in Gary's favorite games. But now I really would like to look at the game Mike Reed is mentioning here, CV, which is about midway, and it's pretty much the same system, and it's from Yaquinto, which is where Steve Peake and S. Craig Taylor ended up after Avalon Hill. I think so. I think that's right. So, Joe, I'm not sure. Joe says, didn't Decision announce that they were going to reprint both Advanced PTO and ETO and then only release a new PTO? I think they did, and I think this kind of died on the vine. Mo from Mo's Game Table. Mo, thanks for stopping by. But Flat Top, great game. It would be easy enough to just turn this into another battle, just literally by making a new map. Right? You've got everything you need here. Well, that might not be quite true, but you've got a substantial amount of what you need. All right, folks, I'll let this run for another minute or two while I yap here. Hashtag Hermensch to win a fine copy of, God, I'm going to blow out a testicle here picking this thing up because it's so heavy. The Rock of Chikamaga from Flying Pig and Ace designer Herman Letman. So anybody who hasn't done that, I'll do the drawing in roughly 55 seconds. How about that? So we got 106 so far already. And of course, big thanks and shout out to Herman for offering. I didn't ask, he offered it. Herman's awesome. We love Herman. Everybody loves Herman. That's why when there was controversy about Herman, everybody was like, what? No, nobody was, and then like everybody who talked to Herman was like, no, Herman's awesome. What are you talking about? Yeah, I figured. All right. And don't forget to hit the thumbs up. That is true. BBN Sports Replay. Well, hashtag Hermensch. That's how you get in on the Rock of Chickamauga drawing. So, you know what? That was the fastest evaporating controversy I can recall in wargaming off the top of my head. It was controversial for like 6 hours. And then like some people talked to some people and some people talked to Herman and everything's cool. Everything's fine because Herman's awesome. So, and nobody's arguing with that. So there you go. Mo, highly recommended. If you haven't tried this system yet, you should give it a whirl. And yes, gotta love the Rock himself, Mr. George Thomas. All right, we're going to hit the drawing here, folks. Are we ready? Let me pull this down. Spin the wheel. Let's see who the big winner is. Charles. Charles, you are instructed hereby to send me an email containing your actual name and actual shipping address. I will forward that to Herman, and he will get the game to you. If you would like it autographed, let me know. And I'll pass that along to Herman as well. Hopefully we'll get that done tonight. My email address is ardwulfslair@gmail.com. It is in the ticker at the bottom of the screen. If you do not get back to me but before next week's show, we'll give it away again. So just to get that out, I think we're going to have that be a rule from now on. If there's some kind of communication problem, then I am the easiest person on planet Wargame to get a hold of. I am on every social media platform. I check most things fairly frequently. I certainly check email throughout the day. So, all right. So congrats to Charles for being the big winner of the Rock of Chikamaga. Once again, thanks, Herman, for shooting this giveaway in all of our directions. All right, so let's move on. Our next entry is Mark Simonich again, Normandy 44. This is a one map. You can play it in 4 to 7 hours, I would say, if you don't have to look anything up. I've played it 5 times, I think. I've both won and lost as both sides. It is a terrific, tight Normandy game. It only runs like the first 3 weeks or so of the invasion. So if you're like looking for a game that includes like Cobra or Fille's Pocket or anything like that, this is not your game. This covers through June 22nd, looking at the map. That's the only way I can remember. But yeah, that's about the first 3 weeks. Engaging. There is a mechanism for the landings, which a lot of people like to skip in D-Day games, but in this case, it's just like a couple of die rolls and on a table and off you go. So it takes like 2 minutes to do it. So it is no problem. So super. I've rated 8s in my top 20. You know what? I don't care what the BGG rating is, right? I wouldn't care if the BGG rating was a 4. This is not one of those shows. This is the show for me to talk about the games I like a lot and why I like them. I like this specifically because, for the same kind of reason I like Ardennes 44, as like it's sort of a 2-map Bulge game that you can play in a weekend. This plays a little faster than that once you get your feet under you, and we're a little behind on drinking a whiskey here, which is unacceptable. It is a very clean design. This is does BGG call this a series? Yeah, so BGG calls this, and a lot of other people do, the Zachbond series. I've bent over backwards to figure out names for this series at one point or another, but we've got alternate. There's a bunch of expansion material for this. Italy 43 is not out yet. This is a very solid medium weight, doesn't take a billion years to play series of war games. The biggest game in the series is Stalingrad 42, and that will take you a whole weekend to play. But anything else you could play in a single day. Ardennes you might take a weekend as well. Oh, well, maybe. I don't invest very much brain power at all in rating BGG games either, to be completely honest. Wolfdog, favorite Normandy 44. Normandy 44 is one of my favorites. I do think I like Holland 44 a little better. That is one of the factors there, is it plays a little bit faster. There's a little less density. But they're both super solid games. So what have I not played from this series? I've never played Ukraine 43. I haven't played Salerno. North Africa 41 does not have Zachbond. So you can put it in this series if you want. And I do have the latest edition of France 40, which I'm not sure I mentioned this. When I bought mine, I bought one of the last copies that Enterprise Games had. And one of the counter sheets was very badly misregistered, and GMT, of course, replaced it. So I've got every game in this series at this point, with the exception of Ukraine 43, if we're counting that. I don't even know. So, All right, so moving on from Normandy 44, Empire of the Sun, released in 2005 from Mark Herman and GMT Games. I think this is one of the most brilliant war games ever designed, one of the most brilliant CDGs ever done, one of the most effective CDGs ever done, and it's a unique combination of CDG with a hex and counter like play method that we don't see very often, and I really like it. There are two big decks here. It is a single deck for each side. There's an allied deck and a Japanese deck. It's a very clever game. It's not particularly, the rulebook's kind of big. It's not particularly complicated, but you really do have to kind of read the rules and then actually play it and see how all those rules that you just read about work together, probably 2 or 3 times. It's not that hard of a game to play. I have seen this described as a monster game. I would love to hear if Mark has an opinion on that. I think that is totally insane. There's a counter sheet and a half in here, and it's one map and can be played in an afternoon. That is not a monster game by my definition, but it is an amazing game. It also, you know, as an added bonus, the map is absolutely gorgeous as well. The Vassal module is outstanding for that matter. But yeah, marvelous game. We have now seen a number of sort of cutouts of Empire of the Sun in South Pacific and Burma, and then the alternate history plan Orange, all of which have appeared in yes, I concur. It is a monster game, Mark, but no, I'm specifically talking about Empire of the Sun. People have called this a monster game on BGG. I assume that it is only monstrous in terms of being intimidating, and a lot of people are intimidated by this game, but I would encourage them to play it. That said, I think we really do need a instructional series on how to play Empire of the Sun. So, but so this is a really hard game to play well. I will 100% agree with that. So unless you're smarter than I am, which is not a difficult bar to limbo under, it's going to be a challenging game, right? To learn and become good at. But if you play it a few times, you'll be fine. It's really interesting to see how all these different mechanics kind of interrelate and work together in this game. If there was a number, if I had ranked this 1 to 20, this would have been in the top 5, no problem. All right, so moving on from Empire of the Sun, we have our lone entry from SPI, interestingly enough, War in Europe. I wanted an SPI game, and I determined that the SPI game that I personally have put the most actual play hours in is War in Europe, which is obvious, because I played War in Europe, and it took a long time. And we didn't finish either. There are, I will happily concede, many issues with War in Europe. Nevertheless, it's one of the few games that the sweep of it is a significant part of its appeal. The same thing applies to Europa and possibly to the Grognard Simulations stuff as well. Oh, excellent. Excellent news. Defiance is in the hands of the art department at GMT. Amazing. And Rick Cox has just set up Empire in the Sun, which is great. And yeah, I think so. Best game ever? Well, you know, who are you asking? I mean, if you ask me some of the time, you could ask me next week, and if I had ranked these in, actual numerical order, I might tell you something different next week. This is how I felt about it in the last 2 days. So War in Europe. It is 7 maps, 8 maps, 9 maps. I think it's 9 maps. It's big. If you look at this rather large floor plan, this is the amount of space that War in Europe takes up. Now, it is composed. I'm talking about the original War in Europe and not Decisions reissue, which I still do not have. It was kind of set up as 2 separate packages, War in the East and War in the West. And then if you bought War in Europe, you got all that stuff. You can play just part of it, right? There are scenarios you do not have to play the entire war at the divisional level at roughly 20 miles per hex, which is about what the hex scale is here. But as you can see, it's quite large and covers all of the war in Europe. All right. Mark is more concerned about the pirates, alien invasion, or war in Taiwan. Any of those things could happen, and the aliens are probably not don't feel like the least likely thing at this point. Yeah, I would actually agree with this. I would actually, and you know what, Rebel Fury too. I would say, and in fact, I think a number of Mark's games are like this. Frankly, I think it's like you look at it, and you're like, huh? I'm not sure if I'm seeing how this is going to work, but play it. And figure it out, and you will see what I'm talking about. Is all I got to say. Nope, this is the whole thing, Jeff Beeler. This is the Spain map is the... I have to look at... I don't know what the map layout is like for Decision's reissue of this. This is 9 maps. No, the maps are pretty much the same. Looking at the campaigns in Europe, Italy map, it's pretty much the exact same area, which I thought was the whole idea in the first place, but you never know. But obviously, you're not getting, in campaigns in Europe, you're not getting the southern maps, and you're not getting the Iberia map. So, but huge game, huge scope. It's got some interesting mechanics in terms of how like armor and overruns work. It's a really quite neat game. And Mark played it with the SPI team. I'm not surprised by that. Does need a big table. I'll tell you what, you can, if you have 2 folding tables that are 2.5 foot by 8 feet, so the slightly larger ones, you can get all of this on that except the Spain map. And if you have a third 8-foot table or 6-foot table, you could probably get the Spain map on it too. You are going to need extra space for the production spirals and things like that. Production spirals, as far as I'm aware, first appeared in World in Flames. They first appeared in War in Europe and were later adopted by World in Flames. But War in the Pacific, I'm trying to remember if War in the Pacific has production spirals too. I'm not sure, but War Between the States does, which is similar in a lot of ways to War in Europe, more so than you might think. How about that? That unreasonable. Now, I'll also point out that there are 2 different editions of War in the East. There's a first and a second edition, and it is the second edition that is part of War in Europe. The first edition is really not compatible with War in Europe. Now, did you guys get this actually played at least a little bit there? Because you weren't going to play the whole thing, I'm guessing. Would it fit on a ping pong table? It might. I'm not sure. I've never had a ping pong table available to set it up on. But it might not. I think you might end up with the same type of situation where you can't fit the Spain map. The Go-Go Gadget Arms. That's how you reach the middle. Really, if I was going to... I worked it out. So my table is 4x8. And I worked out that if I built 2 like little addendum or annex tables or whatever I'd want to call them that were 2x4 foot, that I could in fact fit War in Europe on that. And at that point, we're looking at a footprint of 6x8. So it's big. And like I said, there are production spirals and other displays too that you're going to need to set up. I would probably if you're playing this, I'd probably recommend splitting it onto 2 tables. When we played it, which would have been in the mid-90s, when we played it, we actually put it up on the wall and used blue tack for everything. We stuck all the counters on the map with blue tack. This worked poorly, by the way, not recommended. But if you were going to magnetize it, you would need 1 million magnetic counter holders for it. The 2 halves of it were sold separately as War in the East and War in the West, and sold as one package as War in Europe. Eric Schaefer's talking about Grand Europa with Tom Johnson back in the day. They had to cut a hole where Switzerland was so you could crawl under and pop up in the middle of the map. That is the most Europa thing I have heard all day. I mean, this is kind of true. William Aarons mentions this section right here where you're kind of losing a chunk of Tunisia. I'm not positive that's important, but I am not even a passing student of that particular campaign. Let's just check. Excellent. All right, I've got Charles's address for Rock of Chikamaga. So, Charles, you are good to go. As soon as the show's over, I will send this off to Herman. So, all right. So, moving on from War in Europe, a big project. You're going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's probably going to be an unforgettable wargaming experience, like sometimes Europa can be, despite its mechanical oddities and deficiencies or whatever. I assume that only extremely skinny people could fit inside of Switzerland using this philosophy. But the map scales for War in Europe and Europa are a little bit different, but they're not that different. War in Europe's 20 miles, if I'm remembering this correctly. War in Europe's 20 miles per hex, and Europa is definitely 16 miles per hex. All right. We knew an OCS game was going to make it on here, and I decided I didn't want to duplicate series on this list because I only had 20 to work with. Honestly, this could just as easily have been Baltic Gap. This could just as easily have been another 2 or 3 other OCS games. But today I have chosen the Third Winter. This is Battles for Ukraine, September 43 to April 44. It is a terrific game. This is when the Soviets are starting to counterattack. And trust me, the first time I played this, I had my ass delivered to me by Marcus, who just opened me up like a tin of sardines. It was glorious to watch. But in my defense, those were not my troops that Marcus overran. They were the other guys who was not there that day. No, I really think that Third Winter and Baltic Gap are really solid games. I think sweet spot for OCS is East Front, which won't surprise anybody, but I actually kind of prefer little later East Front. As much as I like Smolensk, and Smolensk is terrific on its own, and it's a great introductory game to OCS. But I think that but there's a little more. I don't want to use the word parody because the Soviets can do a lot more offensively later on, further you get in the war, as you'd expect, right? Which is not to say that the Soviets will not counterattack in Smolensk, because they should, unless the Soviet player doesn't know what they're doing. Carl said, interesting. Carl says, DAC, Enemy at the Gates, and Korea. Now, I have never played Enemy at the Gates on its own. I have only played it as part of Case Blue. So I don't know that I have a real opinion on that. That said, I have actually picked up on, plus you guys are redoing it. So, when it comes out, I'll play that too. But I do have the original Enemy at the Gates because I like it like a crazy person. I went and ran down all the OCS games that I didn't have already. Because why not? I mean, I was only missing 3 of them. Hubis Pocket, the first Guderian's Blitzkrieg, and Enemy at the Gates were the only ones that and Tunisia 1, but that was, I actually think I had that already. That's not that hard to get. Neither is the first Guderian's Blitzkrieg, but that's the one game you can't play updated. And Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2 could also have been in this. Like, that's a terrific game. I love Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2. So, okay, that's interesting. Take Joe's word for it here. He was in the loop originally. Says that the North Africa part of the map of Tunisia was done like that on purpose to force you to go through the Mareth line instead of just going around it, which I think is completely reasonable. Well, perhaps not the best solution, but like I said, there's all kind of artifacts in War in Europe, and it's still a tremendous experience to play it. All right, moving on to our lone GCS game. This is the one that I have had the most fun with, the Devil's Cauldron. I also think it is the best single package in the series in terms of what it contains I don't know if that's as true now with the two greatest day games out, which also have very rich packages with lots of scenarios and all that stuff. The Devil's Cauldron absolutely does, but I've played more Devil's Cauldron than I have of any other GCS game, now that I think about it, or GTS game, I should say. So the GTS series was initiated at MMP by Adam Starkweather, and this is one of 3 first edition GTS games. The others are No Question of Surrender, which is North Africa and the Italians, somewhere, I forget where. And Where Eagles Dare, which is the other half of Market Garden. So this part, the Devil's Cauldron, is like the northern section with Arnhem and Nijmegen. And Where Eagles Dare is the southern part with Son and Eindhoven and the Hell's Highway and all that stuff. We've played the whole thing together. It's a tremendous experience. GTS really shines in this particular game, in my opinion. We are going to, not lack. Oh, let's see here. All right. So we will eventually, I was getting to this. Joe Chacon, who's the honcho for GCS, I think, correct me if I'm wrong on that, Carl. I keep saying GCS, which is Griff's character sheet. It's GTS, the Grand Tactical Series. Okay. So, MMP kind of went back and forth on this a couple of times, I feel like, but they are actually working on a second edition rules update of the Devil's Cauldron. The reason why this is a bigger deal than you'd think is because the changes between first and second edition necessitated some changes to the counters and the values on the counters as well. So the first edition is not really the same thing with Regal's Dare. The first edition game is really not compatible with the second edition rules. That said, I've played it twice with the first edition rules and have no complaints really. I like the second edition rules better. I think cleaned up assaults, which is like the one huge change. But they also changed the way artillery parks work, for example, and I think it's a huge improvement, especially with the artillery parks. Okay, so there are no gamer series. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe he's the guy we called the honcho or something like that. I may, in fact, have pulled that from my ass. But I know that Joe was working on it. So Nick Richardson is the main developer for GTS. Gotcha. Cool. All right. My wife participated in a wargaming conversation with me over dinner where I was talking about what games to be on, what are my 20 favorite war games, which was a bit of a shock. So if you are interested in the Devil's Cauldron, my advice, I don't know what MMP is going to want for it when they redo it, because it is a large game with a lot of stuff, but I would probably recommend waiting for the reprint, which ought to be out in the next year or two, I hope. We'll see. Carl will know about that, but I know it's not quite ready yet, so other than that. All right, so moving on from the Devil's Cauldron, we got 3 more. Pacific War. Pacific War is one of those games that there's nothing else. Honestly, Empire of the Sun's kind of like this too. Peloponnesian War is kind of like this too. Mark, why do you keep doing this to me? There's nothing really quite like Pacific War. It's got its own sort of unique mechanical approach. It's different. It's vast. It's got a smaller footprint than you'd think it would, considering everything that it is doing. It is fundamentally, however, an operational game. And there are approximately 2.7 billion scenarios in here, almost all of which are operational scenarios. You can, in fact, play the whole Pacific War if you want, but boy, that's a big project. And what I would hate to do is to be like 75 hours in and then be tired and make a stupid mistake and miscount the number of hexes I need to get back to base and lose an entire fleet. So it can be a little bit brittle in that respect. But at the same time, there's really nothing that's like this, right? It is functionally an operational game on the Pacific War that you can play the entire Pacific War in. It's really neat. There is I suppose you could solitaire it if you want, and I'm not even sure that's a bad idea in this particular case, because there's so much to keep track of it. I'm not sure you're going to have the other side's stuff straight without it in front of you. But it actually comes with screens to conceal your own private information. But so there is a lot of hidden information here. Nevertheless, I think this is a complete masterpiece. I am delighted that GMT and Mark redid it. I always wanted to play it, and as soon as I got the new GMT, and I had the old Victory Games one, as soon as I got the new GMT version, it was like, boom, I clipped this thing in like 4 days. There's like 10 counter sheets. I clipped it in 4 days. There might even be more counter sheets than that, because the Victory Games original was all half-inch counters, and in the GMT version, the ships are 5/8" counters. So they're bigger counters. No, well, I haven't played it yet, so when I have played it, I will give you an opinion on it. And then you never know, it might actually work. Mark clarifies that there are 34 scenarios. I would imagine you probably played it more than anybody else, but the strategic war scenarios are really interesting. But if you are inclined to do so, lots of people, lots of wargamers, and I have this instinct too, want to jump right into the campaign game. When you've just gotten something new and exciting and you want to play it. I strongly recommend against doing that for Pacific War. You will face plant. You really need to kind of work your way. You don't have to play every scenario, right? But play a couple of the engagement scenarios, play a few of the battle scenarios, play a few of the campaign scenarios, and then if you would like to, and by the time you hit the campaign scenarios, you will be having very satisfying experiences. If you then want to move on to the strategic scenario, go ahead. But this is a demanding game, okay? There's a lot going on. The complexity is pretty high. There's a billion things happening on the map. There's a lot of pieces. It's a lot to keep track of. It's a very demanding game. So make sure you are up to it before trying the strategic scenario. Folks, I have 2 science fiction war games on this list of my favorite games. And one of them is Outreach by Irad Hardy and SPI. The late Irad Hardy, for that matter. So, Patty Rafesky, thanks for stopping by. I gunned it down because I wanted to play it, right? I'm like, I got to have this ready for like Wednesday. So, that's just how it worked. I have not even looked at the Vassal module for Pacific War, I must confess. Now, do you need both Pacific War and Empire of the Sun? Well, I mean, I do, but you could probably pick one or the other. I've talked about Imperium a lot lately, and I didn't put it on this list just because it didn't quite make the top 20. So we'll talk about Outreach instead. Certainly Imperium is on my list of favorite war games and favorite science fiction war games, but maybe it's number 21. And here we have Outreach. This is, we talked about this like last week or the week before, I think. So I don't know if I'm going to blab much more about it today, but it's like a huge chunk of the galaxy. It's got an epic scope of, it kind of feels like you're playing this galactic scale game, right? Whereas if Mark says you need both, then who am I to argue? You should all go buy both. And they're in stock at Noble Knight, so use my affiliate link in the video description. I don't know, man. This year was a number of complicating factors arose in the last 12 months or so. Let me put it that way. That I don't know. We'll do something at some point, but we'll see. Do not have news on that. They are, in fact, yeah. So you can kind of see some of the same thinking going into both games, but they are Empire of the Sun and Pacific War are pretty different games, right? Yeah, well, I mean, if you charge into a strategic scenario in Pacific War, I mean, good for you, but I think you are going to find that you will not enjoy that. Fed and Empire. I haven't played enough Fed and Empire to say, to be honest, but I'll take Outreach. I'll be happy to put Outreach on this list. Marvelous game, tremendous sweep. feels like you're fighting over the entire galaxy. It might not be a super fighting game. It doesn't have to be necessarily, but there will be some fighting in it. Carl, thanks for stopping by. And as Danny points out, please hit the thumbs up if you have not done so already. And then last, because we talked about this literally last week, the last one is Space Empires 4X. I gotta tell you, I like the old cover, but this cover is pretty cool. So Space Empires 4X from GMTN designer Jim Crone. This is, it's a space 4X game, right? It plays smoothly. There is hidden information. But there's like a ton of ways to play it solitaire too. There are solitaire scenarios and all that stuff. So just because there's hidden information doesn't, in this case, mean that you can't play it solitaire. You totally can. Oh, this sounds familiar, doesn't it? This does sound, I don't remember, but this does sound familiar to me. So Space Empires 4X, there's 3 expansions, one of which will be showing up tomorrow, I hope. It's just a terrific game. It really does hit all 4 of the X's: expand, exploit, exterminate, whatever the other one is. It really does hit all those things. I personally feel like many games that get analog games anyway, that get described as 4X games turn out to be missing 1 or 2 of the X's. And I don't like that. Space Empires 4X does it out of the box. There's also a lot of flexibility in what you get, especially if you've got the expansions. There's a lot you can do with it. You can play on bigger maps or smaller maps, or 4 people or 6 people, or you could play with the replicators as their own faction that have their own special rules. There's some new factions coming in as well with the latest expansion. So there's all kinds. And there's at least one playable faction that requires less bookkeeping, which, if you hate the bookkeeping angle and all your other 3 buddies don't mind, then you're going to be good to go, and yet everything remains balanced. It is a pain in the ass to store all the stuff, because by the time you've got the core game and the 2 expansions, you've got, like, I don't know, 8 counter sheets, cards, you've got a board, you've got the hex tiles for the terrain. There's a lot of pieces. But the game is not difficult to play at all. Combat is very simple. It actually works kind of like Axis and Allies in a way. Excellent. Yeah, I got the final expansion, should be here tomorrow, supposedly. I don't know why I'm Mo, maybe you've taken my spot as the lowest person on the GMT shipping totem pole. So I don't think that was Stellar Conquest, because Stellar Conquest came out from Micro Games, Metagaming, and then was later released by Avalon Hill. And I played the Avalon Hill version, and I enjoyed Stellar Conquest. All my friends at the time did not, because of the paperwork. But we were teenagers at the time, so what are you going to do? Right now, I have my counters for Space Empires 4X stored outside the boxes. That is not an incredibly desirable situation, but maybe with the new 4-inch box that All Good Things will come in, we will have the ability to put the counters in there. We'll see. I'm not counting on it. But it does have a lot of stuff. It's very robust. You do technology, you do fighting. You should, by the way, if you're playing Space Empires 4X and you think it's boring, you're playing it wrong. Be aggressive. You got to be aggressive in Space Empires. That's normally not a problem for me. I'm normally a fairly aggressive player, to the point of stupidity in at least some cases. Army Group North. So, Mo, I got my shipping notice, I don't know, a couple days ago for Army Group North and Space Empires All Good Things. So, it should be available at this point. I did the Stellar Conquest had like Death Stars or something like that, or Doom Stars, or maybe I'm mixing that. I've played a lot of space exploration and conquest games. So, I mean, it could be this, it could be Stellar Conquest, it could be Eclipse, it could be Twilight Imperium, it could be any of the 15 different computer games I've played, going all the way back to Master of Orion and Ascendancy. Well, this would be extra aggressive, but it totally works. I've even played Microverse, which is quite good. So you know what? I haven't played much ASL in the last 5 years. Since COVID, I was just getting back into playing ASL, and then COVID hit and fucking wrecked the planet. So I was like, I couldn't really, it just didn't work out. So I'm still buying ASL. Oh, by the way, I don't have pictures of any of this, but I am in the midst of reorganizing some things. So this office is where I do this show, but if I'm doing other filming, it normally happens out there. So what I'm trying to do is set it up so that all of the role-playing games are here in the office and all of the war games are in the game room. That's the plan. Not positive that it's going to work at this time, because right now I've got a considerable number of war games outside the game room. But, we'll see what happens. There was some kind of super duper Death Star type ship in Stellar Conquest. I'm not sure if it was called a Death Star or not. Might have been Dreadnoughts, though. Might have been Dreadnoughts. All right, folks, that is the full list. So let's pull that down and wrap the show up with probably a couple of minutes early. When money started to get tight around here, I went through and canceled a couple of pre-orders from MMP. But I mean, MMP, I'm not ordering nearly the number of games, pre-ordering the number of games from MMP that I was from GMT. I went through the GMT list and ruthlessly cut out a ton of stuff. But Army Group North, those particular games were games that stayed on the list. Let me put it that way. Same thing with the Space Empire's expansion, because I knew I wanted that. I am pretty lucky I've got not only that, but I've got outside the game room. I've got a video on this. So watch the video if you want to see the whole floor plan. But right outside there, I've got a little sitting area now. And it's nice. I sometimes sit out there and read, or if it's super hot out, it's the coldest place in the house, and it's cold. At least now in the summertime. So if I need to cool off, I sit on that sofa down here. She hasn't done anything lately. I can tell you that. So, it's worth going through those lists, because you can, sometimes there are people who ordered Army Group North, 15 years ago, and they're just getting it now. So after that, we should see Army Group South. Hopefully that'll be next year. So the office is cat-proof in the sense that there's a door, and I don't normally keep the door closed. But hey, Mo, cost of living here in Ohio is low. So, check it out. And Akron, Ohio in particular is one of the lowest overall cost of livings in the country. I didn't put a GBACW game on this list, did I? I did not. That is true. Only 20. I love GBACW as well. Hexy got his AGN shipping notice. So yeah, I got mine on Thursday or Friday or something like that, last week sometime. And according to UPS, it should be here tomorrow. So I'm a basement. So here in Ohio, a lot of not every house, but a lot of houses have basements. And I like to have a basement because it's extra space that it doesn't necessarily have to be finished. I don't care if I'm just playing games down here. I don't care if the floor is concrete. I can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy one of those 6x8 rugs. In fact, that's the carpet in the game room, is those 6x8 indoor-outdoor rugs from a Home Depot. They were $10 a piece, and I don't have to worry about spilling coffee on them, or if the cats claw them. I don't care. It's all good. So I love my basement. Oh, excellent. Mark's got 3Dog on one of his tables. Well, I agree with this. This basement is I say that it's basically, it's pretty good, but it's not perfect. If the rain is really exceptionally heavy, I will sometimes get a little bit of leakage around the back stairs. There's 2 exits to this basement. I'll sometimes get a little bit of leakage on the floor, but I mean, it's got to be absolutely pouring, and it's not that much. So I'm not terribly concerned about it. I'm more concerned if there's a power outage and it is continuing to rain and the sump pumps are out, which is why I've got a generator. A lot of parts of the country, basements are a rarity. Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't have facing, I kind of think Mark's right about this. Maybe it's grand tactical or operational instead. So I've had water twice in this basement. Is that right? 3 times. Okay. However, one was my fault because I forgot to unhook the hose and it froze in the wintertime, and when we turned it on in the spring, the pipe blew. And that was the big flood back here. Now I got that repaired. And then they had to come back after a month or so when I noticed that the repair was leaking. So they fixed that. That was a pretty small amount of water. And then I had a situation where I left a sink running upstairs and some leaked into the basement, and there was water down here, but it also was not a huge amount of water. And the only one that like came in here was when the pipe blew in the ceiling. So it's not a walkout. It walks out into the garage. So I can go into the basement either from the laundry room that's off the kitchen or directly from the garage. And I have a fairly heavy-duty dehumidifier as well. I do have 3 Dog Deluxe and Stepping into Hell on pre-order. And No Turning Back, for that matter, as well. I agree with this. Yeah, I make sure that everything in here is at least a little bit off. I got to get rid of these at some point. These got to go. I'm not really concerned about them falling apart because I've had these things for like 20 years at this, 15 years at this point. And if they haven't collapsed by now, they're unlikely to. But they look like shit. They're very rickety. And they've been water damaged because there was water in here at one point. And they are made of particle board. So I will at some point do the rack shelving like I did out in the game room, both on this wall and the other wall right here that you cannot see. And I will gain approximately 7 or 8 feet of shelf space by doing that as well. So it's all very useful. All right, folks, we are going to wrap the show up. I really hope to have some more videos out for you this week, but I can't make any promises because, to be honest, the next 2 days are going to be insane. So I'm not even going to be able to even do anything until like Thursday, so we'll see. But I've got 3 games that I got in the shrink wrap, one of which is the Rock of Chikamaga, that need to be unboxed and filmed and all that. So you are going to see some videos from me, and if it's not this week, it won't be too much longer at this point. So I want to thank everybody for stopping out once again. Big thanks to our patrons, without whom we couldn't keep doing. I just couldn't keep doing this if it weren't for the patrons and the support from Noble Knight and the super chats and all that stuff. So I want to thank everybody for coming out every week. We had another great turnout, over 200 people tonight. We will be back next week with a new show. We'll see everybody then. Have a great night.